Hey there! Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into the world of armored vehicles, specifically the Bison and Coyote. These impressive machines have a rich history and have been in operation for quite some time. The Bison and Coyote are a family of armored vehicles developed by the British company, BAE Systems. They were first introduced in the late 1990s and have since been deployed in various missions around the world. The Bison and Coyote share a common design, with a V-shaped hull for protection against mines and IEDs. They're equipped with a range of sensors, including thermal imaging and night vision, as well as a powerful engine for mobility. The Bison, in particular, has a 600 horsepower engine, while the Coyote has a 500 horsepower engine. In terms of armament, the Bison and Coyote are both well equipped with a 40mm cannon and a 7.62mm machine gun. They're also capable of carrying up to 12 troops each. Over the years, there have been several variants of the Bison and Coyote, including the Coyote 2 and the Bison 2. These vehicles have been in service with various militaries around the world, including the British Army, the Australian Army, and the United Arab Emirates. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this dive into the world of armored vehicles, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. The Bison and Coyote are armored cars, or armored personnel carriers built by General Dynamics Land Systems Canada for the Canadian Armed Forces. 1-2. Bison vehicles have been used to a lesser extent by the Australian Army and the U.S. National Guard. 3. Bison, type armored personnel carrier, place of origin United States, service history. In service 1990-present, used by sea operators, War on Terror, War in Afghanistan 2001-2021, Yugoslav Wars 1991-2001, United Nations operation in Somalia to 1993-1995, Gulf War 1990-1991, Oka Crisis 1990. Production history. Designer General Motors Diesel. Design 1988. Manufacturer Diesel Division General Motors Canada. Produced 1988 prototype. 1989 regular production. No. Built 199. Variants personnel carrier, field ambulance, 81mm mortar carrier, command post, maintenance and recovery vehicle, electronic warfare vehicle, mobile repair team vehicle, airspace coordination center vehicle, reconnaissance vehicle for 5. Specifications: mass 13t14 short tons, length 6.5 meters 21 feet, width 2.6 meters 8.5 feet, height 2.6 meters 8.5 feet, crew to driver and commander, plus 8 passengers. Main armament: 1x C6 7.62mm machine gun pintle. Engine Detroit diesel, 6 volts 5.3 cycle turbocharged diesel, 275 horsepower. Transmission Allison 5-speed MT653. Suspension 8x8. Operational range 650 kilometers for 100 miles. Maximum speed 100 kilometers per hour 62 miles per hour land. 10 kilometers per hour. The Bison is an armored personnel carrier that has been in active service since 1990. Built by Diesel Division General Motors Canada. 6.5. They were purchased and intended for operation by the Canadian Forces Primary Reserve, but were rapidly appropriated by the Regular Force of Land Force Command, leaving the Armored Reserve units with unarmed Tiltus Jeeps. 7.65. The National Guard is a state-based military force that becomes part of the U.S. military's reserve components of the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force when activated for federal missions. 2. It is a military reserve force composed of National Guard military members or units of each state, the territories of Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia, for a total of 54 separate organizations. It is officially created under Congress's Article 1, Section 8 enumerated power to raise and support armies. 3. All members of the National Guard are also members of the Organized Militia of the United States, as defined by 10 U.S.C. Section 246. National Guard units are under the dual control of U.S. state governments and the U.S. federal government. 2. The majority of National Guard soldiers and airmen hold a civilian job full-time, while serving part-time as a National Guard member. 5. These part-time guardsmen are augmented by a full-time cadre of active Guard, and Reserve AG are personnel in both the Army National Guard and Air National Guard, plus Army Reserve technicians in the Army National Guard and Air Reserve technicians are in the Air National Guard. 6. The National Guard is a joint activity of the United States Department of Defense. Composed of reserve components of the United States Army and the United States Air Force, the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard, respectively. 7. Colonial militias were formed during the British colonization of the Americas from the 17th century onward. The first colony-wide militia was formed by Massachusetts in 1636 by merging small, older local units, and several National Guard units can be traced back to this militia. The various colonial militias became state militias, and the United States became independent. The title National Guard was used in 1820 by some New York State militia units, named after the French National Guard in honor of the Marquis de Lafayette. National Guard became a standard nationwide militia title in 1903, and has specifically indicated reserve forces under mixed state and federal control since 1933. An armored personnel carrier (APC) is a broad type of armored military vehicle designed to transport personnel and equipment in combat zones. Since World War I, APCs have become a very common piece of military equipment around the world. According to the definition in the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, an APC is an armored combat vehicle which is designed and equipped to transport a combat infantry squad, and which, as a rule, is armed with an integral or organic weapon of less than 20 mm caliber. 1. Compared to infantry fighting vehicles, FVS, which are also used to carry infantry into battle, APCs have less armament and are not designed to provide direct fire support in battle. Infantry units that travel in APCs are known as mechanized infantry. Some militaries also make a distinction between infantry units that use APCs and infantry units that use IFVS, with the latter being known as armored infantry. A military armored, also spelled armored car, is a wheeled armored fighting vehicle, historically employed for reconnaissance, internal security, armed escort, and other subordinate battlefield tasks. 1. With the gradual decline of mounted cavalry, armored cars were developed for carrying out duties formerly assigned to light cavalry. 2. Following the invention of the tank, the armored car remained popular due to its faster speed, comparatively simple maintenance, and low production cost. It also found favor with several colonial armies as a cheaper weapon for use in underdeveloped regions. 3. During World War II, most armored cars were engineered for reconnaissance and passive observation, while others were devoted to communications tasks. Some equipped with heavier armament could even substitute for tracked combat vehicles in favorable conditions such as pursuit or flanking maneuvers during the North African Campaign. 3. Since World War II, the traditional functions of the armored car have been occasionally combined with that of the armored personnel carrier, resulting in such multipurpose designs as the BTR-40 or the Cadillac Gauge Commando. 2. Post-war advances in recoil control technology have also made it possible for a few armored cars, including the B-1 Centauro, the Panhard AML, the AN-X-10 RC and E-9 Cascavel, to carry a large cannon capable of threatening many tanks. 4. Origins. Land Force Command began looking for a new armored personnel carrier to equip the Canadian Forces Reserves. After the release of the 1987 Defense White Paper by the then recently appointed Minister of National Defence Canada Perrin Beatty, which announced major spending increases to support the Canadian Forces Reserves. 6.5. Leading this project was Colonel Romeo Dallaire, the head of the Army's Armored Vehicle Assessment and Procurement at the time, who was intent on purchasing 200 M113A3, the most recently upgraded variant of the M113 series, which the Canadian Forces were already using in the form of M113A1 South and M113A2S. 5. The original plan for these 200 M113A3 South was to have the vehicles manufactured in the United States, with some parts produced locally in Canada to fulfill Canadian content requirements for Canadian Forces procurement. 6. At the same time, Diesel Division General Motors Canada (DDGM) was nearing completion of LAV-5 production for the United States Marine Corps and was facing the potential of having empty production lines for a year at the Ontario plant, as they had no additional contracts until 1990 and considered shutting down the plant during that time. 6.5. During this time, a small team of salesmen and engineers heard about the Army program and thought they had a chance to scoop up the contract and supply a vehicle based on the LAVTA chassis, with the idea that the vehicle would be better suited to the intended reservist role over the M113A3 due to being wheeled compared to the tracked M113 APC, as the vehicles would likely do a large amount of their movement by road within Canada, as well as the cheaper operation costs of using a wheeled vehicle for the reserves. 6. Design, prototype, and procurement. To convince Land Force Command to purchase the vehicle, 2 engineers from DDGM began to design the vehicle by working on a small-scale model of the LAVTA chassis. They cut off the troop compartment and added a large box on the rear half of the vehicle, which increased internal capacity. They replaced the 2 doors previously used for the troop compartment with a ramp similar to the style found on the M113. This small-scale model was then shown to Dallaire, who was not interested in the proposal and continued to support the M113A3 acquisition. 6. At this point, DDGM decided to begin flexing lobbying muscles in 1988 to get the Canadian government to consider the vehicle more seriously. DDGM secured the support of Michael Wilson, the Minister of Finance, as well as members of Mobile Forces Command Headquarters in St. Hubert, Quebec. Engineers and executives of DDGM realized they would likely need the support of Dallaire, who obtained the contract, and decided that the way to win him over would be to build a full-scale prototype vehicle and present it to him. DDGM saw an opportunity to do this at Canadian Forces Base Borden for Armed Forces Day on June 5, 1988, as both Dallaire and Beatty would be attending the event. 6. The engineers had little time to spare to produce a prototype of the vehicle, and began by starting with a LAV-25 that had been used in tests to judge if the LAV-25 could be airdropped from transport aircraft. Similar to the small-scale model, they began by cutting off the troop compartment while keeping the suspension, drivetrain, and front half of the vehicle intact. The cut-off area was cut piece by piece and then welded together to create a box on the rear half of the vehicle and was then fitted with a ramp. The turret ring was then replaced with a large folding roof hatch. A raised commander cupola was added on the front left of the vehicle behind the driver. 6. The entire process to produce the prototype took 8 days, after which the Bison, as named by DDGM, was assembled, painted and ready to be shown. It was driven up to CFB Borden and was presented during the parade on Armed Forces Day. It was considered to be a success, with Beatty coming on board with the idea, but stating that he would not force the Army's hand to purchase the Bison over the M113A3. 6. While the prototype had seemingly won over Beatty, Colonel Dallaire was not convinced and continued to support the M113A3 acquisition, which caused DDGM to send a lobbyist to Ottawa to work on him, making largely the same arguments as DDGM had before, that the Bison would be more cost-efficient for operation by the reservists over the tracked M113A3, that the Bison did not face the same restriction for use on roads as the tracked M113, and that the regular force would simply reacquisition new M113s, possibly implying that DDGM likely knew that the regular force would appropriate the new vehicles for their own use, as although Colonel Dallaire did not budge, the Army sidestepped him and decided to purchase the Bison in July 1989 in the form of 149 Bison armored personnel carriers, 18 Bison CP command posts, 16 Volf 81mm mortar carriers and 16 MRV Bison maintenance and recovery vehicles. 6.5. The Bison production version differs from the baseline LAV-25 by raising the height of the roof, removing the turret ring, placing a commander's cupola behind the driver, and incorporating a rail mount system in the cargo passenger compartment to quickly change mission-specific key equipment. The driver is seated in the front left of the crew compartment. The commander has a slightly raised position directly behind the driver with access to his own hatch and mounted machine gun. The engine is to the right of the crew compartment. The Canadian Forces began upgrading the Bison between 2002 and 2008. The upgrades include improved engine power, new torsion bars, fittings for add-on armor, air conditioning, and the VRS respirator system for nuclear, biological and chemical NBC defense. 8. Variants. The Bison's rail mount system allows it to be adapted to a variety of roles without any major modifications. Bisons used by the Canadian Forces have been adapted for use as armored personnel carriers' original configuration, mostly replaced in this role by the LAV-3, 81mm mortar carriers, command post vehicles, field ambulances 32, Mobile Repair Team, MRT Vehicles 32. Armored Recovery Vehicles 32. Airspace Coordination Center Vehicle, Electronic Warfare Vehicles 25. Engineer Vehicles equipped with hydraulic tools and NBC Reconnaissance Vehicles 4. 6.5. Legacy and Operational History. The Bison is described by Peter Kosarik as being the first step on the road to the transformation of the Canadian Forces, moving away from primarily tracked armored vehicles towards wheeled armored vehicles, setting a trend that is still prevalent. 5. The Bison was seen during various high-profile events during the 1990s and 2000s and is often associated with those periods and conflicts. 6. It was seen by the public and used by Canadian forces during the Oka crisis, the Gulf War as part of the ground security force defending coalition aircraft, the UN and later NATO missions during the Yugoslav wars in the form of OPROFOR, IFOR, SFOR and KFOR, in the United Nations operation in Somalia to with it being mentioned in the Somalia affair, and the war in Afghanistan 2001 to 2021 as part of the ISAF contingent as part of the War on Terror. 6. Coyote. Coyote Reconnaissance Vehicle. Canadian Light Armored Vehicle at the Calgary Stampede. Type Armored Car. Place of origin United States. Service history. In service 1996 present. Used by Canadian Army. Wars War in Afghanistan 2001 to 2021 Yugoslav Wars. Production history. Designer General Motors Diesel Division. Specifications. Mass 14.4 T 15.9 short tons. Length 6.39 meters 21.0 feet. Width 2.50 meters 8.2 feet. Height 2.69 meters 8.8 feet. Crew for driver, commander, gunner, surveillance suite operator. Main armament 1x M to 40 to 25 mm chain gun. Secondary armament 1x C6 7.6 to mm machine gun coaxial. 1x C6 7.6 to mm machine gun pintle. 8x grenade launchers to cluster of 4. Engine Detroit diesel 6 volts 53T. 275 horsepower 205 kilowatts. Suspension Nate 8-wheeled, for drive. Operational range 660 kilometers. Maximum speed 100 kilometers per hour. The Coyote has been in service since 1996 for use in the light reconnaissance scout role. It was initially used in the role of medium tank trainer within armored cavalry squadrons in the same way as the AVGP Cougar it replaced. 10. Origins. The Coyote Reconnaissance Vehicle is a non-amphibious armored reconnaissance vehicle based on the design of the LAV-5. The Canadian Forces ordered 203 of the vehicles in 1993 to replace the Lynx reconnaissance vehicle. All were delivered and entered service by 1996, 11-12-13. The Coyote originally came in 3 variants: the mast variant with a mast-mounted surveillance system, a variant with a remote surveillance suite, and a basic reconnaissance command post variant. 11-14-15. Armament. The Coyote mounts a 25 137mm M24 to Bushmaster chain gun and to 7.62 x 51mm NATO Th6 general-purpose machine guns in an electrically driven turret. The turret features a laser warning receiver and mounts a total of 8 grenade launchers into clusters capable of firing smoke and fragmentation grenades. 13. One of the machine guns is mounted coaxial to the main gun, while the other is pintle-mounted in front of the crew commander's hatch. 12. The main gun is equipped with dual ammunition feeds that allow for separate weapons effects, selectable by the gunner, crew commander. The standard load is a belt of armor-piercing sabot rounds and a belt of heat explosive fragmentation rounds. The main gun and coax machine gun are 2-axis stabilized. The turret is equipped with a laser rangefinder, but no ballistic computer. Elevation and lead corrections are applied manually by the gunner using multi-stadia reticules in the day, thermal, and image intensification sights. Citation needed. Protection. The standard armor of the Coyote protects against small arms fire, anti-personnel mines, and shrapnel, with add-on armor kits able to protect against larger projectiles. 15. The Coyote is equipped with a suite of devices for detection nuclear, biological, and chemical NBC weapons, consisting of a GID-3 chemical detector and an NVDR2 radiation monitor. Each vehicle is equipped with an NBC ventilated respirator system. 13. Sensors. The mast-mounted surveillance variants are equipped with a mast-mounted surveillance system that can be raised to 10 meters above the ground. 13. This system includes the PPS-5, CMSTAR version 3 surface surveillance radar and an electro-optical, infrared surveillance system with a long-range video camera and laser rangefinder. 16. The remote surveillance variant consists of two tripod-mounted systems capable of being deployed up to 200 meters away from the vehicle. The surveillance systems can detect tank-sized targets up to 12 kilometers away and large truck-sized targets up to 24 kilometers. In good conditions, the visual surveillance system can detect personnel up to 20 kilometers away. 12. Mobility. The Coyote is powered by a Detroit diesel 6V 5.3T engine developing 275 horsepower to 105 kilowatts and can reach speeds of 100 kilometers per hour 60 miles per hour on road. The Coyote has a maximum road range of 660 kilometers for 110 miles. Each vehicle is equipped with a tactical navigation system that includes a GPS receiver, a digital compass system, and a backup dead reckoning system. Citation needed. A 15-ton capacity hydraulic winch is fitted to every vehicle to aid in self-recovery. 13. Unlike the LAV-25, the Coyote is equipped with extra fuel tanks in place of amphibious equipment. 14. The Coyote is air transportable on Hercules C-130 aircraft when the turret is removed. 17. Variants. Coyotes come in 3 variants: command, mast, and remote. The mast and remote variants have a sophisticated suite of electronic surveillance equipment, including radar, video, and infrared surveillance night vision devices. The mast variant has this equipment mounted on a 10-meter telescoping mast that can be extended to raise the surveillance suite out from behind cover. The remote variant of the Coyote has its surveillance suite mounted onto short tripods, which crew can deploy remotely using a 200-meter spool of cable. When first purchased, the Coyote was designated for service with both the regular force and reserve force, with the mast variants earmarked for the regular units and the remotes designated for the reserves. Shortly after taking delivery of the vehicles, but before they were assigned to the reserve units, all Coyotes were reassigned to the regular force. Citation needed. Service history. Since the introduction of the Coyote to the Canadian Armed Forces, the vehicle has been used domestically and abroad. The Coyote was deployed during the United Nations, NATO missions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Kosovo, and in Afghanistan. Domestically, it has been deployed during Operation Grizzly to Kananaskis to secure the 28th G8 Summit, the 36th G8 Summit, and the G20 Toronto Summit, 1819, in addition to a number of domestic emergency response incidents. As of 2015 to 2022, the Coyote was in the midst of a planned retirement and being replaced by a mix of TAPV and LAV-VI armored vehicles. 2021.